Are you more of an enduro bike guy or more of a trail bike guy? Let's talk about it. You know, I've been doing this for more than 10 years now, and I've had hundreds, if not thousands of conversations, it's probably thousands of conversations, of people about what bike they should buy when they get into the sport. It's probably where I've been able to benefit people the most is new riders and new people getting into our sport. And one of the most common questions is, well, if I'm gonna have a first bike, why don't I buy one of the more trail bikes? They're a lot more economical, and it seems like they'd be a better fit for me over the more enduro, more high performance bikes. And the biggest reason why I have a hard time suggesting the more trail bikes like the Honda CRF125F, the Honda CRF230F, or the Honda CRF250F, or even think about bikes like the Yamaha TTR230 or the Kawasaki KLX140. My biggest problem with recommending those bikes to a lot of guys that contact me is I'm just not sure it's gonna light your fire. And if it doesn't light your fire when you buy this motorcycle for $5,000 to $8,000 or whatever, you know, you may not stick with dirt bikes. And part of the reason why you might not stick with dirt bikes is because it doesn't make you excited. I want to be excited about dirt bikes, and that's where the enduro bikes have always made me excited and given me that adrenaline rush, and that's what I want to talk about today. So let me jump into some reasons why the trail bikes, it's not like they're bad bikes or they're bad motorcycles, but there are some major differences between the two, even though they both have motors and two wheels and brakes and stuff. So let's jump into that. But before I get too deep into this video, I need you to know that I'm giving that bike away. It's a mint condition 2022 KTM 250 XCW. I have made this thing better than new, and I'm giving it away. So if you go to my website, click the button right down here, the link right down here, go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com, before the end of September and get entered to win this bike and $7,000 in cash, because 11 of you are gonna win prizes. There's gonna be the bike and then $7 grand in cash. So go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com right now. So back to the discussion. The trail bikes are made for family fun and people who just wanna go out and have a easy, casual day out on a dirt road or some trails or whatever. And that's what these bikes are made for, and certain pieces of them are awesome. Whereas the enduro bikes are more built for more racing. Like, I don't race, but a ton of guys race bikes just like this, even off-road bike, off-road races, hare scrambles, hard enduro races, and these things are high performance machines, but they're a little bit more intimidating. Let's talk about motors first. Typically, your trail bikes are 4-stroke motors that are air cooled. I kind of like, if you look at this Honda engine here, now this is a 125 versus a 250, but the same thing would go if this was a 230 or a 250 trail bike. They're air cooled motors, they're big and they're heavy. They're simple, they'll kind of go forever. They're like bulletproof, but it's kind of like a lawnmower engine where it'll go forever and it's really reliable. You come over here to the 2-stroke and it's this enduro bike, and some of the enduro bikes obviously are 4-strokes, but this is a liquid cooled motor. It's a much lighter motor and produces way more horsepower, because this thing is just like, it's just a little bit more complicated and it's lighter and it's made for more high performance stuff. This bike is going to be generally quiet. These enduro bike or trail bikes are going to be generally quiet, whereas the enduro bikes, the racing bikes, going to be a little bit louder, but they're going to produce a lot more power. Let's talk about suspension for a little bit. It's easy to blow through the stroke, meaning it's easy to use all of the suspension on one of these trail bikes. It's not a high performance setup, and you can see that the suspension is inverted on these two different motorcycles. This gives you, on the enduro side, this gives you a much more suspension travel and just a better performance as far as in the front and the back. So your frame, in fact, this is still a steel frame on this enduro bike. Some of the off-road bikes, some of the racing bikes, depends on what you're looking at. If it's like Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, they'll have aluminum frames. But the point is, these things are a lighter frame. There's more performance in this thing between your frame and your suspension. So it's kind of easy to almost ride beyond the capability of this, or at least blow through the stroke, as they say, on a trail bike and use up all that suspension. Another thing to mention about the frames is that typically your trail bikes are a lot lower to the ground, and this is where people really kind of gravitate towards them when they're starting out. You can see this bike is quite a bit smaller, even though it's up on these stands that are the same height, but this bike is much higher off the ground, and you can still see it's quite a bit smaller. So the seat heights on these trail bikes are going to be lower, whereas your seat height on this is going to be a lot higher. That's going to be intimidating for some riders, but that's just giving you the most performance. The people who are, a lot of the people who are paid to ride motorcycles at the highest levels, they're between 5'6" and 5'9". So it does feel like these things are made for giants, but that's just to get the most out of it with, you know, people's general body types. So it's just enough you should know that your enduro bikes are going to be quite a bit taller seat height. And I always tell everybody, including my boys when they were growing up, you only really need to be able to put one foot down at a time. You don't need to put two down at a time, even though a lot of people want to. Let's talk about brakes for a minute. Typically on your trail bikes, you're going to get, now this does have disc brakes on the front and rear. Actually, it's got only disc brakes on the front, and then there's a drum brake on the rear. But both of these are not super great brakes. When my boys would ride this, they're like, you can't go very fast, and then you can't even slow down very fast. So you'll get some moderate brakes on the trail bikes, but they're not super high performance. Whereas on a lot of your enduro bikes, you'll either get a Brembo brake, which is top of the line hydraulic brakes front and rear, or you'll get like a Nissan brake on the like the Japanese bikes. Those are fantastic brakes. You'll get Brake Tech brakes, which I don't like as much, but they're still good. But the point is, on your enduro bikes, you're going to get a much better braking system. It's typically always going to be hydraulic brakes, whereas on some of your trail bikes, you're going to get like a drum brake. So let's talk about maintenance. That's one thing where the trail bike is really good. Like, they're pretty bulletproof. As far as like oil changes on a motor like this, I go way too long on oil changes because it's low compression and it doesn't, you know, this motor doesn't get very hot and we're not pushing it very hard. So your maintenance on this is a little bit less. You're typically not burning up clutches, and that's because you're not like dragging the clutch, you know, that much. And then as far as chains, you kind of have to do chains no matter which. It's about the same as far as maintenance, but on a bike like this, because it's putting less power through that drivetrain, I do think that the chains last a little bit longer. Whereas on your enduro bikes, especially if this was a 4-stroke enduro bike, a high performance 4-stroke, you're going to be changing that engine oil every 2 motor hours, maybe every 10 motor hours at the very top. And so you're going to be changing that engine oil a lot more. On the 2-stroke enduro bikes, I change the gear oil, you know, probably every 10 to 30 hours. And so there's not a ton of maintenance on the 2-stroke, depends on how hard you're riding it. But you do have more maintenance on these enduro bikes, and part of that is just because you're riding the living you know what out of it, and so you end up breaking stuff, you know. So, but you're putting more wear and tear through one of these enduro racing bikes, and it's mainly just because it begs you to ride it so hard. So I think there's a little bit of more maintenance over here. The types of terrain that they can handle, now we kind of already talked about that with suspension and the frame, but these trail bikes are good for dirt roads, fire roads, you know, just visiting your friends up and down the street. But they're not super great for, you know, terrain that has big G-outs or big washes or big logs or big roots. That's where the enduro bikes are going to be better, because just they're set up so they can go faster and they can handle bigger obstacles. And it's much more fun for me to ride like mountain single track, alpine single track, or desert on one of these enduro bikes. This is the bike that I put my little daughter on the front, and we go around the neighborhood, and I use this bike all the time. We'll go, you know, looking for decorations or just like driving around the neighborhood and just spending time together while she's still little, and I've done that with all my kids. Whereas this bike, it's not nearly as fun to take a kid on because it's loud and it's obnoxious, and you know, you want to have your gear on. So it just kind of depends on what type of riding you want to do. If I'm going to do desert, mountain single track, anything fun, this is the one I want to be on. If I want to just take a kid and poke around, we'll take this. So the trail bikes are affordable and they're forgiving, but they might not light your fire and they might not be that fun. Whereas the enduro bikes are a little bit more expensive, they are a little bit more intimidating, but it is set up so much more for performance. And for me, that's kind of where I lie. These ones, the trail bikes don't light my fire, and I want to have adrenaline, and I want to be juiced up, and I want to be excited, and when I twist the throttle, I want to have a giggle. You guys have heard me talk about that, and that's what happens when I'm on these enduro bikes or the motocross bikes. They're super fun. I had these types of bikes growing up, or at least access to them, and I was a four-wheeler guy because these didn't do anything for me. And then I was terrified of like the 65 and the 85 2-strokes, and I was just kind of scared. But then once I grew into a man, I became about 30, and I got an enduro bike. I was like, oh my gosh, and it just kind of changed my life. So these things are pretty incredible. Now, if you have questions or you want to have a call with me, there's a link on my website that says contact Kyle, and we can have a phone call. I have them, you know, most days with people, or you can send me an email and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And then also, again, I'm giving this bike away. This is a mint condition bike with about 10 hours on it, I think it has. And I've made it better than new. It's a TPI fuel injected bike, oil injected bike. It's got the air screw mod on it. We did a bunch of things across the bike and it's just absolutely sick. This is going to a very lucky winner. Get entered to win this thing by visiting my website, dirtbikechannel.com, during the month of September. You only have a few more days. And then 10 other people are gonna split $7,000 in cash. So this is a huge giveaway with 11 different winners. And this bike is gonna be the grand prize in that. It's technically the bonus prize because it's a long story, but the point is the dirt bike and $7,000 in cash are going to go to 11 different people. So thanks so much for watching. And yeah, until next time, leave a single track. Thanks.